Okay, so let me log into MongoDB as well. Okay, so we had built these two things, guys, the register endpoint and the login endpoint. So let us continue building on top of that. Okay, and what we can do is we can go and let's delete the data. Okay, so this is how we were storing the data. The password, the bio, contacts we did not had, and the password was a hash password, right? So one thing I want you guys to want to ask from you guys is now let's say the user has logged in, right? Or the user has registered. So then what? Then do we need to pass the password, or user needs to write the password every time, or this can access the app, right? They can access the app anytime. Okay. So they do not have to write this password again and again, right? So how do we authenticate users if they are trying to access some data on a different page? Let's say once they logged in, they are into the chat page or the chat screen, right? Or the home page or the settings page. So we need to have some kind of authentication mechanism as well. So for that, we will use token. Okay. So how do we do that? We can go here. See, here we are using a middleware. Middleware means it will, whenever it will do a save, it will run some checks here and it will perform some operation. So similarly, what do we want? We want to generate some kind of user token. Okay. And what that token will do, that token will be used to authenticate the users in the inside the application. So they will not have to pass the password again and again. So what we can do is, let's go to user model, and here we can say user schema dot methods. We already have this function. So this is again a middleware that will generate the authentication token. So let's create a async function, and here we can have a try catch. Now we want to use a token, so we will use a library for that. And I'm not sure if we have JWT. Yes, we have it. So what we can do is we can go on top. We can say import JWT from JSON web token. So we can go here and we can say let token to be JWT. It's a library, and we can just use a sign function, and the sign function will take three arguments. So one is the data that you want to use to generate the token. The other thing would be the secret key. So we can say process.env.secret. So we will have a secret key. And other thing is when you want to expire the token. So we can pass the expiry options. So we can say expires in, let's say, 24 hours. And here we can pass the details. Let's say id to be this dot underscore id that we normally get from the MongoDB, right? And email to be this dot email. So it's like a middleware again. It gives us the token and it will create a token and then it will just return the token wherever this function is called. But if there is any error, we can for now check console.log error creating token. Now, this secret is something that you can create, right? It could be anything, but if you go to, let's say, JSON Web Token, NPM, you will see that this is the exact syntax that they are asking us to use, right? Some private key or anything, okay? And this is the expiry part. So there are multiple ways to write that. And whatever the algorithms that it uses behind the scenes, right? You can check it out, but this is a pretty good library as it has these many downloads, right? And the size is very small. It is MIT licensed. Its latest published is uh, 3 days ago, so it's a pretty good library. Okay, and you can give these many expiry options depending on your use cases, right? And with just that, it will just give you this particular option, right, of generating the token. So what we can do now is we can have a env file, can have a secret, and you can just give it any secret as such, right? Whatever. So yeah, I think that's fine. And now we want to use this token. So where we will use it? We were creating the user's API, right? So the user's API logic should be in the user controller. And inside the controller, what do we want? We just want to, while the user is registering or logging in, we just want to send them back the token, right? So here you can see we are registering the new user. So once we are registering the new user, we are saving the user and we are sending the success message. So at that point only, once the user is generated, we can also generate the token. And now we know that we already have created the function. So we can say await new user dot generate auth token, and then we are saving it, and then we can just pass the token, or you can directly pass the token, that would be fine. So this is while registering. Okay, similarly we have to do while login. So let us do that as well. So we can go here, we have invalid credentials, we have valid password, and here we are sending back the status. So we can say the same line, but this time it's not a new user, it's a valid user. So valid user dot token, and then we can say status, and we can also pass in the token, or however you want to do that. Okay, so we are passing the token. Now, one more thing that we can do is we can basically send some details in the form of cookie as well, right? So I will write some things down, then I will explain it. So we can say user token, and we can pass in the token value, and then we can pass some option. So for security reasons, just to safeguard our token, we can just say HTTP only. I will explain all those points, and we can give the expiry, or you can say max age of the cookie, right? So you can say 24 into 60 into 60 into 1000. And we want this to be secure or not, so we can pass a secure key. So again, we can say something like process dot env, and we can pass a node env constant or a secret. And if this is equal to production, then only we will pass the secure as true, because in development we do not want this option, right? And then we can say same side to be strict. Okay, so yeah, so this is the name of the cookie. This is the value of the cookie. It's nothing but the JWT token. And this HTTP only basically is that it cannot be accessed by the JavaScript on the UI. Because whenever you have access to the Chrome developer tools, right, users can access that particular uh, cookie, right, using writing just JavaScript. Let's say document dot cookie. So when you say HTTP only true, it will not be able to, the hacker or someone will not be able to access it using JavaScript. And it's kind of best practices, right? And the cookie expiry day, it's 1 day. And this means that if it's in production, it will go through HTTPS and not a normal HTTP. But we are testing on local, right? So local, this development is fine. Then the last thing is same site to be strict. So this means that cookie is sent only when request comes from the same site, right? It will not allow the passing of the token from different domains. So it just blocks the cross domain part. I will also add some comments, guys, but this is how, like, this is what we are doing, right? So all this is just to safeguard our token so that it does not go into the wrong hands. Now, what we can do is we can try it out. So let me do npm start, and now we will do the registration. Let's try. And something is not working here. Error creating token. Okay. So let us try to debug that. So we did the registration, right? So the issue should be here. No, I think the issue is error creating token. So where we have put this, right? Then there we have to find the error. Okay. What should be the issue here? JSON web token. I think this is fine. Here we are passing. Okay. This is not working fine. Okay, now let's try again. But we should delete the record that we have created. Okay, so let's try that one more time. Saying users already exist. Let us refresh. Okay, let us try that again. And yeah, now we are getting the message, and now we are getting the token on the registration time. And what we will do with this token, guys, this token we will pass on from the front end to the other APIs that will help user get access to the data in different pages. Is it making sense, everyone? Is this part clear? And same will happen for login side as well, right? Once you log in, you will again get the token. So that token you have to store. Is this part clear? Any questions? Guys, am I audible?
We can hear you.
So this part is clear, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now we can start creating the different APIs that we want. For example, let's say that we are in the users. Uh, let's go to user apps, and we can have couple of user options here. Okay. So for example, let's say if you want to check if the user is valid or not. Okay, or if you want to log out the user, then this would be the API. But then we will have another function or a middleware. So that's called as a middleware in Express. So middleware is a concept where you want to process something in the between and then pass it to the main function, right, or the main callback. So you can have all the logic here for logout. Let's say that logic will be to pass the token, right? But now we will use a middleware because that piece of code, this piece of code, you will have to use it every time. So we can use a auth middleware that basically what it will do, it will the user will request to this API, it will check if the token is valid or not. If the token is valid, if everything is fine, it will pass the logic to the logout, so then user can log out successfully. If not, it will return the error at this middleware layer as well, right? So it will not move on to the controller. So this auth is very important, and that's why we created that token that we will use. So similarly, we can have let's say other APIs. Let's say auth slash valid. So that will tell us that if the user is valid or not. So we can have a different uh, controller for that, right? Similarly, if you want to search for any users, so we can say router dot get, and you can just say slash API slash user, and we can search for users, right? If you want to get the user by a particular ID, then also it's a get request. But this time the we will pass the user ID. So we can say colon ID because this is a placeholder. So ID can be anything. It will be object ID from the record that we have in the MongoDB database. So we will use that ID, and here we can say get user by ID. And then similarly, if you want to update a particular user, right? So it will be a patch request. So patch means if you want to update a particular part of the fields, so we can say slash API slash users slash update. Now we will update which record. So we will need the ID of that user as well, right? So we can say auth and we can say update info. Now we have not created these functions as of now, but this is just to give you a sense that we have the APIs. Okay. And we will have to work on that. So what we can do is, I think this one is pretty easy. Let's build this one first. So now we know that if you want to create a get API for get user by ID, so this is the function, this is the controller that we have to create. And this controller will be created inside user controllers. And here we can have a function, let's say export const get user by ID. We can say async request and response, and this would be our controller, right? So this logic is pretty simple. Okay, give me a second. So this logic is pretty simple. What we can do here is the user will pass the ID not from the body, because this is a get request, right? So the user will pass from the params. So just like we had request.body, we will have request.params, and from that we will extract the ID, and then we can add a try catch, and we can say const selected user to be await, and we have the user model. So get user by ID means you just have to find the user by that ID. So we already have a method for that. So we can say find that one record, where we can say underscore ID is equal to the ID that is coming from the params. Now this will send you the whole user record from the MongoDB, because it matches with that particular ID, and that ID is unique to that user, right? But it will also send all the fields. It will also include the password. So to exclude the password, we can say dot select, and we can omit the password. So you will see this while consoling, right? So this is the very simple logic that we can write in MongoDB, and this is just a mongoose function. So we can say response dot status, and we can say 200, and we can say dot JSON selected user. Now, if you want to catch the error, we can say response dot status to be 500, and whatever the error that we are getting, we can pass the error. So this is the function that we can create. I think it's giving error because auth is not defined. So what we can do is we can go to user, and if you want, you can omit this for now. It's saying get user by ID is not defined. So let us import that. Okay, so what is our API? Our API is slash API slash users and ID. So let's say new request, get user by ID, and we can say, let me copy that. Get user by ID. You can pass this, but the actual API is slash API slash user slash underscore ID, something like that. Okay, so yeah, it's users. Now to test this out, we just have to pass the ID. So we only have one user created so far. So what we can do, okay, let's go here, and this is the ID that we have. So let us test this out. Slash ID, and you see, guys, this works, and this does not includes the password. So this is the data that we sent on the front end. Now, this is something that this particular thing, right? This API, if someone is using directly, right, they will have access to it. So this is not secured. Why this is not secured? Because there is no authentication mechanism here. There is no middleware that we were trying to use here, right? So we have skipped that middleware. That middleware is important. Why? We will see that. So what we can do is we can add this middleware. Now, why we are calling it a middleware? Because we have to use it for multiple APIs. So it's better to call it, right, or to create it. So what we can do, we can go to our middlewares folder, and here we can say user.js, and we can import our user model. Let's say models slash user model.js, and we can also import our JWT because that was the library we were using for generating the token. So we have to make this endpoint private. It's a public endpoint. Anyone can access this, right, with just this URL. But we don't want that. We only want those people with the correct authentication token to access this particular APIs or all the APIs after registering or after login. So we are creating this middleware. Let's say const auth, and let's create a racing function. So we can say request response, and we also get a next function. So next means you pass it on to the next middleware. If there is no middleware, it will pass it to the controller. So we can say try and catch. And how to get the token from, guys? There are multiple ways to for the user or the front end to pass the token, but normally you will get it from request, and we have the header section. Inside that we have authorization. Okay, so we can do something like const verified user. How do we verify the user? We can say jwt.verify, and we can pass in the token that the user is sending us from the headers request, and we will match it with our secret. And now we have, once we have the user, we can call that as the root user, or we can give any name. Await user dot find one, and we can pass on the ID. We can say find that user where the underscore ID is equal to verified user dot ID, and again we have to omit the password. So once we do that, what we can do is we can say request. We can add some fields that we can use globally. So we can say token to be token that the user is passing because this is valid. And we can say request dot root user to be the root user details. We can pass that. And we can also have another key, let's say root user ID, and that would be this root user dot underscore ID. And after all of this is done, we can call the next function. So it will pass on to the next middleware or to the controller. Otherwise, we can just say response dot JSON, and we can send an object with error as invalid token. So this is the function that we have created, and this function will extract the token, verify the token, and then pass it on to the request, and it will move to the next middleware. So there can be any number of middlewares. You can pass on the middlewares, let's say middleware 1, middleware 2, if you want, as per the requirement. But normally for this case, we don't want any. We have just one middleware. After that, we do not have any. So it will just move on because we have called the next function. It will just move on to the get user by ID. But if there is any error, it will just return the error then and there. So now what we can do is we can go here and we can import the auth. Or not here, maybe we can instead do it here, right? So we can say import auth from middlewares slash user.js. Okay, so it should work now, and let's test this out. So now we have passed on the middleware, right? So now if you try to access this API, it will return an error because there is no token. Okay, so how do we do that? So guys, if you see, we have the registration token that is already here, and that token we need to pass it now as per our logic. It is coming from authorization headers. So while you are making the request, we can send the headers. We can add a header. You can say authorization, or maybe small. And now when we try, let's see. Yeah, it works. But if there is any expiry token or if there is any token mismatch, let's say I remove Y from here, it will return invalid token. So now we with this one easy middleware, with just this 4 or 5 lines of code, we have made our APIs secure so that only the valid token users can access these APIs after registering or login. Same we can do for login. So once the user logins, it will give the token back, and the front end can pass those token to the subsequent APIs in the authorization header, and they can use it easily, and you can get the access. Otherwise, it will return an error. Is this part clear, guys? Any questions? Guys, this part is clear. Nazir, Raghu, Benazir, Akshay, Aman. So we just have to create it only once, right? Once we have created it, you just have to pass it to the subsequent APIs, right? So that's the beauty of, or you can say that's the importance of middlewares. You create it once, but then you use it at multiple places. Okay, so similarly, let's create these options as well. So let's say we create the logout and we create the update info. So guys, see now when we have a proper structure, right, it makes sense of what we want. Now, if you want to create a new API, we know that okay, this middleware is already created, so let's use it. But we will need these different controllers. Okay, so these controllers would be coming from here, and let us go to the controllers and let us create them. So let's say export const logout, and this would be an async function. Same request and response. We already created that. Okay. Similarly, we can have one for update info. So for this case, guys, what we want to do is first of all, while login, we were setting up the cookie, right? So we need to clear that cookie first because that user is no longer valid. So we can say clear the user token cookie. And I will also when I will send this code with you guys, right? So I will also have write and put some comments so that it will be easier to understand the logical flow. But for now, we are doing very basic things, right? So how to clear this? We can just say response dot clear cookie, and we can just say user token, and we can pass the same options. HTTP only to be true, and we can say secure process.env.node.env is equal to production, and we can say same site to be strict. So we will now return the success response. So we can say response dot status 200. For logging out, we do not want to do anything in the MongoDB database, right? And we can say message to be logged out successfully, and status to be 200. But if there is any error, we can just say console.log logout error. and we can pass on the error. And then we can say response.status, status to be, let's say, 500. And we can say error during logout. Yeah, I think that's it. And for update info, what we are doing is we are updating the user record, right? So first of all, we know that the update API would be like this. So it will require an ID, API slash user slash update slash ID. So similarly, how you're extracting the ID from get user by ID, right? We will do that here. So it's the same thing. You can say const ID. It will be coming from request.params. But the other details that you want to update would come from request.body. So let's say name on bio, and we are getting that from request.body. So we can say try catch. We can say const updated user. Now what we need to do here is we can say update await user, and this is our user model. So in order to update, we first need to find and then update. So there is an inbuilt method in MongoDB or Mongoose. You can say find by ID and update, as easy as that, right? That's why you are using Mongoose. So you can pass on the ID, and the details that you want to update would be in the next object argument, right? So you want to update the name and we want to update the bio. So this will return the whole updated record, but we want to omit the password. We don't want to work with the password. So we can say dash password, and we can write a condition here. If there is no updated user, in that case, we can say return status 404, and we can send back the message. It's not a message, then it would be error. And we can say user not found. Otherwise, we can say return response dot status v200 and dot json message. You can say user info. You can put any message updated successfully. And we can also send back the user details if you want to, and that would be updated user. Okay. And if there is any error, we can say response dot status, let's say 500, and the error would be error object itself. Okay, so this is this part. Yeah. So I think this updated info and the logout is also complete. Guys, any questions in that?
Sahil, I just feel like only thing that definitely matters was the I mean the form like the basically the callouts format, right? That whatever the syntax that we are using. So I think that's where can you just share the format with us as well? Like for example, if it is with the authentication mechanism, like there is a
Hmm.
different call out, and if it is like how we are filtering out and apart from that, I think it's almost just like with other frameworks, right?
Yeah, yeah. So the only thing is that what we are doing is we are connecting to MongoDB and using just Mongoose functions. So these things are already there in the documentation itself. But if you're asking about the flow, that flow I can write in the comments, or I can create some document or diagrams that so that it will be easy when you go through that and create. It will become more easier if you take that as a reference.
Yeah, that might help, Sahil. Yeah, because it's more or less almost the same, but I do feel like only the syntax is getting changed, and the way we call out.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll do that, right? Once we create this, I'll create the plan for that, the document for that.
Thanks, Sahil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys? Okay. So yeah, we can create this, but I would say let's test this out together only. But on the logical side, if this is clear, right, then this is fine because there are again couple of methods, but it says that you have to go to the Mongoose library that we are using, and they have their methods, right? So all these methods you can use any one of them.
Okay.
Right. It's not like you can say find and delete. You can say find by ID, find by update, just find, exist. You have to dive more into that, but more or less the functions update one, update many if you want to update together, replace one, right? All these methods are there by default. And if you want to go to the schemas, you can check how you can create the schemas as well, right? So this is very basic. We just have to see, we just have to almost copy and paste. The reason why I'm writing from scratch is so that at least the syntax will go in our head, but all of these things are already present in the documentation. And it's just that you have to, if you want to have a schema, you just have to change basically the key and value, right? That's the only thing.
Got it, Sahil.
Yeah. Let me try one more thing. If we, yeah, so I'll also create a basically collection for it, right? So I'll send it so you can use the APIs for testing also. So we have a Postman collection, but I'm not sure if that would work here in this Bruno. Settings collapse. Collection. Okay, I'm not sure if it's supporting the JSON part. So I will create one. Collection settings. This I have started using new because this is like offline and it's very easy to set up. This Bruno. Okay, let me check if we can do that. Documents, sample API collection. Okay, let's try out. This the error. So I'll create that, right? I think it's giving some error, but now we know that it supports the Postman format, so we can get the pre-built testing collection for it. Okay. Yeah, so we have the register endpoint working, we have the login, we have the get user by ID, and we need to test basically the other ones. Okay. So what we can do now is for the user management, we have users slash ID and we have the update as well. Okay. So we can go and we can create the chat routes as well. So now see, now the things is just you have to analyze what we did earlier and what we have to do now. So just like the users part, if you see what we need to do. So we can go to the index.js, that is our entry file, right? And here you can see that we used uh, slash this for users route. So we will also have a message and we will also have a chat. So guys, in the chat application, what will happen first? Okay, we created the users because yes, user management will happen first. User will log in, user will register, you will get the user with ID, all sorts of stuff. He did that, right? So what should be the next step? Can directly user message between, like, can user start the message or start messaging with its contacts? No. The thing is that first we allowed the user management, the user session, everything. The second, we have to create a chat, right? Only once you create the chat, only once you allow the two users to interact with each other, only then the user can message, right? So this should be the last part of the application. So we can do that, we can create chat routes, and just similar to the user routes, we just have to almost copy paste now, because you can see we are importing user routes like this. Similarly, we will import chat routes. So the structure is very important, guys. Chat.js, and you can go to user routes. Same, we can go to the, not to the controllers, but similarly just like that we have here, you can go to the chat, and this time we will import the functions from chat controllers. Middleware, yes, we require. And what all the APIs we want, right? So let's do that. So this structure would be same, the APIs will change, right? So we can say router.post, and we can say slash. So the API that this becomes is, it will be, if you go to index.js, it will be slash API slash chat, and this does not make any sense. So this will be just one slash, right? So it will be API slash chats. So we can pass a middleware, and the function that we want is, let's say, access the chats. So we can import that from here, and similarly we can say slash, and this would be a post request if you want to access the chats. We will have a same endpoint but with a get request, where we will fetch all the chats of that particular user. And yes, everywhere we need the authentication. Then the user can create a group, so we can have a group endpoint. And since we are creating a new record, it will be a post request, and we can just say create group. And yes, we will have to authenticate in between. So this middleware is coming very handy for us. Then if you want to rename the group, then we can have a patch. So we can say slash group slash rename, and we can say rename group. And similarly, we can say slash, and this would be a patch. So we can say group add, and we should keep it consistent, guys, but I'm just keeping it like this, so you should know that you can do it like this also, like this also, but you should always keep it consistent. Same, we want a middleware, and the controller that we want is add to group or anything. So we'll have to create all those things. What else we can have for remove? And we can also have one more, and this would be a delete request. So this will be router.delete, and we can say slash remove user, and we can just pass the authentication. For now we will have to build that, right? Okay, so these many functions we need to create. Cool. So what we can do now, we can start building them one by one. So this should be the one chat and this should be the second one that we should build. And then these are just related to groups. So let us comment that for now. And the very first thing that we can do is we can go to our chat model, and we have not created anything, guys, right? So again, this would be similar. So what we can do is we can go to the user model. Let's copy and paste. So this would be chat schema, and this is something that we will fill out. So let's keep it empty object. This we do not require. It was a part of user management sessions. And we can say chat model. We can say chat here, and we can say chat schema. The structure is same, and then we can import it. Okay. So what do we want, guys? A chat can have what? Let's say we are having a one-on-one chat between two users. So what do you think we should store? It could be a group chat, it could be a normal chat, right? So what all the fields, guys, you think is important? Can we have a photo? Yes. Should we have a chat name? So chat name can be if it's a group, right? Otherwise, it's just a sender or the receiver name, right? And then we can say if the chat is a group chat or not. So we can have a is group key for that. And then we can have the users of the chat. So if it's a one-on-one, then it will be just two users. When it will be multiple, then it will be an array, users array. Then there should be a case where you are showing the latest message, right? And then there could be a case if it's a group, then we should definitely have a group admin. So I can think of these fields for now, but you can add as and when you think more about that, right? So we can start building the schema for this. We can say, okay, we have a photo. So that photo would be of type string because it's just a URL. And we do not want to, if you want to give a default, you can give, but for now, I'm just giving it an empty string. Then we can say chat name. And it would be a type of string. Then we can have is group. Is group would be what, guys? A boolean. And by default, we can say that, okay, it will false because not every time user wants to create a group at the start, right? And then we can have a users. So this users would be what, guys? It would be an array. Now, just like we use SQL to join and everything, right? Here we don't do that. Here users will be a part of the users document because those users can only be the users of our application. So we already have the users list, right? So it can be an array, and the type of that would be an object ID. So how do we do that? We say mongoose. We already did this in users table, right? So dot schema dot types dot object id, and the document that it needs to refer to or take reference from is the user document, because it would be an array of users. And similarly, it will have a latest message, and that message would be again a type of object id, and this would be from the reference of message group or the message document, but we have not created that as of now, right? So you can for now comment it out, but this should be there. And lastly, we can say group admin. Now group admin would also be a part of user stable, so we can just copy and paste this. So type would be object id, the reference would be from the user's document, and so on. Okay, so now since we have our schema ready, what we can do is we can go to our chats API. We have the access chats, so we can go to our chat controllers and we can start building the logic. So we can say export const access chats async request response, and what we can do. So it's better to let's create the structure first, right? So in order so that these things do not fail. Okay, let me open that side by side, and here we can go to our chat controller. First of all, let's put it in the imports, and we will just create empty functions. But I think now you guys are familiar with the structure, right? Of how to set up the routes, how to set up the controllers, and all these things. Okay, so it should not fail now. So up till here, is it making sense, everyone? So we created a chat model, we created some chat routes. Then we moved on to the controller section where we have the actual logic. So we'll have to access the chat, fetch all the chats. We have to give option of creating the group, renaming the group. And whenever you are making APIs, right, the only thing that makes sense is to uh, do the create one first, because unless and until you create the records, you will not be able to fetch, update, or delete the records. But if you want to create the basic APIs first, then you can fill the MongoDB with some dummy records, and that can also be done. Okay. So what we can do is we can create the access chat function or controller, right? So let us do that. And then we will test it out. So in order to do a chat, guys, between two person, right? So both of them would be logged in, but from the logged in user's point of view, user will click on a particular name, right? The friends list from the name, and we have to pass that ID, right? So the first step would be to extract the user ID of the person we want to chat with. So how do we pass that data? Access chats is a post request. So we'll pass the user ID from request.body. Right. You can have some sort of validation if you can use different libraries also, but we can just have a simple check. It's not mandatory also, but just a simple check. If there is no user ID, then we can say return response dot status 400, and we can say dot json message provide users ID. Okay. Next step, see, it depends, guys, right? We can prevent the user from creating chat themselves. It's up to the product or up to the requirement that you are building, right? But now we can have application where we can chat with ourselves. So that's something that you can do that, right? It's just a requirement thing. It's just a if condition. So I'm not going to that part. So now I can add a try and catch. And what I can do is once we have the user, we will first check. We'll check if one-on-one chat already exists between both users, right? And is group will tell us if it's false, it will tell us that it's a direct chat, one-on-one chat. Okay. So how do we do that? We can say let chat exists, and we can say await. We can say chat model. So are we importing it? No. So we have to import that. So we can say import chat from models slash chat model.js. And similarly, let's import the user model as well because we will require to work with the user. Okay, cool. So we can say chat dot find one, and we can say find one where is group is false. And one more thing is we have to also find the users where we will use this selector. So these selectors are handy, guys. So when we say all, that means the array or the user should contain both the IDs. One is the user ID that we are passing from the body. The other, if you remember, we were passing while the user was getting authenticated. So we can get it from request dot root user ID. So that is the purpose of why we were passing it here, right? So what this all does is this all ensures that both users must be present in the users array. Otherwise, there is no one-on-one session or one-on-one chat. Then there is another way to see. We are getting the chat, right? So we need to remove the password. We can do that. So we can say dot populate, because what it is doing, if you understand this 1-2 line of code, it's going to the chat model, it's finding the chat, it's bringing the user's ID, and then we want to populate. See, it will bring only the ID. We want to populate the whole detail of those users. So you'll populate the user's detail, but we do not want the password. So you'll omit the password. And why? So we'll just remove the password field for security. Right. So you'll also have to write some logic here if the chat exists. So I'll write in the comments, if chat exists, then we will populate sender details of last message and return the existing chat. But we do not have any chat model so far. Okay. So next what we can do is, if chat does not exist, we create one on one chat. So we can say const chat data, and we can just give the chat name to be, let's say, some sender for now, and we can pass the users array. And again, we have the user ID, we have the request dot root user ID, right? And since this is a one-on-one chat, we will say is group to be false. So what we can do is, we can just create a new chat. So we can say const new chat to be await chat dot create, and we'll pass on the chat data because that is required by the model. And next what we can do is, we can populate users before sending response. So we can say const full chat to be await chat dot find by ID, and we can pass on the new chat underscore ID, and we can say then dot populate the users, but we omit the password. Okay, so if there is any error, or finally, what we can do is, since we have the full chat, we can say return response dot status. Since we are creating the chat 201 dot JSON, and we can say full chat. So we need to handle the error as well. So we can say console.log access chats error, and we can pass on the error. And finally, we can say return response.status to be 500, and we can say some message to be internal server error. Okay. Yeah, so I think this is fine. So some of the logic it's yet to complete because we do not have the last message or the message modal created, right? So if the chat was existing, then we could have done that. But since we're trying to create a new chat, I don't think it's gonna make sense, right? So let's try this out. So we can go here, and we have only created one user for now. Let's also create another user. Let's keep this as it is, but let's create a new one. So now we should have two users. Okay. So this is the first user's token. So what we can do is we can create a new request. We can call it as access chats. This would be a post request. So let's have a post request. Let's call it as access chat. And the API would be it would be what? It would be in the index.js, right? So we have root URL slash API slash chat. Okay. And we want to pass in the token just like that. So we can go here. I can pass in the header. Let's copy. Okay. And in the body, what we were expecting here. So we can pass the JSON, and we can just say user ID to be, and the user ID we wanna want to see. Currently, the token that I have passed is off. So pay very attention to this, guys. The token that I have passed for is of John, but now the records has two. So we want to create a chat with Peter. So we'll have to pass this ID. Okay. Yes. So yeah, we are passing the token, we are passing the ID, and if I do it like this, you see that the chat has been created successfully. Okay. And what this, see, this is the response that the user will make from the UI, and this is the response that they will get on the UI. But if you see on the record, let's test, and let's click on refresh. So it has not created, I think, the chat. I am not sure. Let's test this out. We are getting the correct data here, but the chat is not created on the MongoDB. Okay, it's created now. Great. And in this chat model, you can see, guys, the data that is being stored is like this. The chat name is this. It's not a group. Yes. And these two are the users. These two are the users. And this is the timestamp. But when you populate or when you create a chat and when you want the data returned from the backend, you just don't want the IDs of the users, right? You want their details as well. And that is what this populate does. This populate does. If you are not passing this populate, then it will just return these IDs, and this will not make sense on the UI, because on the UI we want to display the actual data. So that's why we does the populate. So it will populate this data from the users table for us, and then we send the final response. Is this part clear, guys, everyone?
Can you please explain it once more?
The access one.
Yeah, this populate one.
See, pop. If you are not passing the populate, then it will return this users just as the array of IDs, because that is how it's storing here, right? But now a join operation, just like you do a join in MySQL or SQL, here we are
Okay.
saying, okay, populate from the users table the data of these two user IDs, and then we are finally returning it. So that's how
Okay.
you see not the IDs, you see all their name, email, all those populated. And we are also saying omit the password. We are saying get all the users detail but omit the password, and this that is what is happening, right?
Okay.
And this is something that we want on the UI, because on the UI only the user IDs would not make any sense. You will have to populate the data.
Okay, Simon. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so since this was the first time creation of the chat, right? So the logic went fine, but this case we are not able to handle because we want to get the details of the person who has sent the last message, right? So that's why let's go and basically let's create the message model as well, and this is pretty simple. So we can go to our user model. Let's copy, let's paste. We do not want these things. It should be a message model, message, then message schema, and yeah. So what we can have is we can have a message key. So message will always be a string that we are storing, and we can say we want to trim the message if there are any spaces or anything, right? But there will be a sender of the message. Okay, there will be a sender of the message, and that sender of the message will be again what, guys? It will be populated from the users table, because user will be the sender, right? Whatever the user would be the sender. So we can say type to be mongoose dot schema dot types dot object id, and similarly we will have the chat id that the sender belongs to, or the message belongs to. That would also be a type of object id, but it will take reference from which model, guys? Chat model. And this would be message schema. So a message will have a sender, that will be a user. It will have a chat ID, that will be a chat. This is how we are creating a reference or a linkage between message and its user, its sender, and its chat. So this will be the schema, and we do not require anything else here. This part is clear, guys? Any questions on this? This is pretty simple, right? It's just a schema that defines what we want to do. That's it. Okay. So this also we have created. The next thing that we can do is we can go here and we can complete this logic. We can add the latest message. That is fine. But for now, let's go here. Let me delete the chat. Okay, let's go here and let's go to the chat controllers. And here we can add one more logic. We can say while we are populating, the users will also populate the latest message. And this latest message key is already there. So we have this, right? And once we do that, we can say chat exists, and we can say await user dot populate, and we can pass in this data, all these things. And then we will also pass one object where we can say the path would be latest message dot sender and next what, or maybe what we can do is we can have a condition here just to be sure only if this exists. So what we are doing is if the chat exists, we are populating the sender details and we are returning the existing chat. So we will say select, and what all the data that we require is the name, email, and profile pic of that user. Okay. And then we can say return dot status, let's say 200 dot json, and we can say chat exists. And if it does not exist, then we are creating the new chat data, we are passing the new users, and then we're creating the new chat. So ideally what we are doing, we are reading the user ID, we are validating the input, then we are saying search if the direct chat already exists. If it is exist, we are populating the chat details and we are returning it. If not found, we are just creating a new chat. And we also populate the results safely without the password sections, and we are also doing a proper error handling, right? So we have the logins and the response structure in place. Okay, so yeah, I think we can test this out now. Okay, so we can go here, we can say send. Yeah, it works. When we say send again, we are getting the chat details. Since there are no messages, guys, the latest message is not coming. So we will test this out later on. But I think the logic is pretty much complete. So what we can do next is quickly build the next set of APIs. So APIs is there. Let me just write the logic. Then you will have a chance to test this out completely and maybe create this things right on your own. So let's say we want to fetch all the chats. In that case, what we can do, it will fetch first of all. Fetch all chats means fetch the direct plus group chats, right? And the condition that you can write is where the logged in user is either a member or the group admin itself. Okay, so let's have a try and catch. And what we can do here is we can say two things, right? Find chats where first user exists inside the users array, then that user would be a member, or user is a group admin. So how do we do that? We can say const chats to be await chat dot find, and we can add a or condition here. So this is again a or selector, and it's an inbuilt part of Mongoose syntax. So we can say or, and we can say users, and inside this we can add another condition. So this is the top condition or, but inside this, see, or means either it should be a user or it should be a group admin. And group admin would be if it's the user itself. So root user.id, if it matches with the group admin user ID, then it's a group admin. Otherwise, it's a normal user or a member inside that group member, right? So this is the case for group admin, and this is the case for direct or a group member. So inside the users also, we will have one more condition. We will say if the element matches. So you can say ELEM match. And this condition basically is that it should be equal to request dot root user ID. So if you understand in this way, it's kind of a nested condition in terms of Mongoose syntax. So what is happening here is, okay, we have two cases: if the user is a group admin or if the user belongs to the users array. So if it's a group admin, the user ID will be equal to the group admin, so it will be considered as a group admin. Or inside the users array, if the root user ID matches with any other ID, then it's just a direct member. And once we get the details, we can populate the user's data, and you will omit the password. We will populate the latest message. We will populate the group admin details. We will omit the password, and we will sort the chats. And if you want to get the most recent first, you can say updated at to be -1. So populate all the users without password, attach the latest message to it, populate the group admin safely, and then sort it with the most recent chat first. Now what we can do is we can just say final chats const final chats to be await, and we can go to the chat model. We can say populate, and we can pass the chats here, and we can say the path should be latest message dot sender, and we can select the details like name, email, and profile pic. And lastly, we can just say response dot status, and we can send back the final chats. Again, if there is any error, we can just say 500, and it's better to log it for ourselves because it might throw error. Fail to fetch chats, and we can also console it. Okay, so how do we test it out? We can go here. Let's say fetch all chats, and we need to pass the token. Let's pass the token. It's saying connection refused. So the app got crashed due to some reason. I think there should be some syntax issue. So try and catch. Okay, so it's able to get the chat. Now we will have to, guys, test it out at multiple cases. But for now, when we hit this endpoint, and from the token, it will extract the root user ID, right? And from that root user ID, it will give us all these details. So this is the only chat that we have. That's why only one array of objects. If there are, let's say, multiple chats, then it would have been multiple arrays of objects. Okay, any questions here, anyone? Okay, so the last message is not there because we have not created the message as of now. So we have created the access chat, so the user can create a chat and we can get all the chats. So we have create group, we have add to group, we have remove from group, and this is very, very basic logic, right? So guys, shall I create this and let you know how to test? Will you be able to do that this week? I will add those logics as well. So then we can have some time for testing it out. Okay, so guys, if you have any questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, we can end the session, and I will complete these APIs in some time. We'll send you the latest code and the Postman collection so that you can test it out. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week ahead, and please practice this out, guys, because then we'll have to in the next class we will install Socket.io, and that will be for real-time messaging. So that is a very important piece. These APIs are more or less the same logic. The structure is same, but we will do the Socket.io connection, right? So ensure that you are there present. Okay.